So this morning for the sermon time, we're going to do things a little bit differently. And I'll explain that by starting this way. One of the greatest predictors that later in life you might turn out to be a Unitarian Universalist is if when you were a kid and you went to Sunday school, if you went to Sunday school, your Sunday school teacher took you aside one day and told you were asking too many questions, right? So I thought I'd create this space once a year where we invite in those questions, where we bring them all into our hearts and invite the questions of faith to explore our hopes and dreams and longings. And there are many reasons for this. I'll say that it's helpful for me as the pastor of the church to kind of get a spiritual pulse for the congregation. So hearing your questions lets me know what's on your hearts and minds. And perhaps just as important, it's an opportunity for us to hear what's on one another's hearts and minds. And sometimes we discover that we're not alone in our questions and our doubts and our hopes. Just a couple of things that I'm going to invite you to remember as I respond to the questions today. I'm going to do this extemporaneously. I have seen the questions and I've kind of slept on them, but I haven't scripted an answer, and so it's going to be kind of informal and extemporaneous. I want to say that your questions are my questions too. I'm responding to your questions. I'm not answering them today. I don't pretend to have all the answers, right? We're going to explore them together. And though each question is submitted by an individual, I'm going to present them anonymously, and I'm going to respond to the congregation as a whole. If you submitted a question, or even if you didn't, and you want to have come meet with me for a more personal conversation about your questions, please make an appointment to see me, and we can do that. And I'll just close by saying that we received more questions than we'll have time to answer today. So if you don't get your question answered, also just kind of give me a call and we'll make an appointment and we can talk about those, okay? So without further ado then, I think we'll turn to Siobhan, and Siobhan's going to share the questions, and I'll do my best to respond to them. Let me just put this down.
Rob, there were a lot of questions about hope and hopelessness. So let's start with one of those. It feels like we're living in a time when it's hard to be hopeful, a time when the future seems that it will never be as nice or comfortable as our past. How can we be creative about what to hope for in the future?
There were a lot of questions about hope. Hopefulness, hopelessness. That's one of the important vital signs that I try to keep my finger on in the congregation. The question is, how can we be hopeful about the future? And I think I want to just kind of maybe shift that around a little bit. Religion asks the question, what is the horizon of our hope? Where can we look to for our hope, right? And some faiths teach that, well, we can look to the past, kind of a nostalgic faith. We look to a former time and hope that we can kind of revive that and bring that into the future. Okay, we might have heard a slogan called "Make America Great Again," right? That's an example of that kind of a faith like that. Another way of thinking about hope is to look to the future and imagine some kind of idealistic time, like heaven on earth, when justice will roll down like thunder and righteousness like a mighty stream, right? And we'll build heaven on earth. But it's often far in the distance. And I think I want to suggest that we ground our hope in the present. And that we look for the horizon of our hope right here in the present, in the glimpses of beauty and justice and goodness and grace that are present right now even in our imperfect and sometimes broken world. This grounds our hope in our concrete and lived experience, not in some future dream for the future, right? It grounds it in the love that we know is present here today. So it starts with the hope starts with a gratitude for that beauty and that goodness and that justice, and then the ethics of that hope are to build that out and to grow that beauty and goodness and justice. But this isn't. Some people place their hope in the by and by. Some faiths place their hope in the by and by. Ours is a faith that places our hope in the here and now. And I think that kind of concrete faith in the love that's present now is actually going to sustain us more than kind of hoping for some dream in the future. So hope is a discipline that we practice today, not a dream for the future.
Thanks, Rob. The next question is, how do I build a life that suits me after deconstructing a life that didn't suit me?
Wow. That's a spiritual question. And I'm sure that it's one that many of us can relate to. We come to times in our lives when we realize the life we've been leading doesn't work for us anymore, right? And we're called to something new. We're called to a new life. That can be a scary time. It can be an exciting time. And so I want to say to this person first, congratulations for the insight and the wisdom to know that the life you're living isn't suiting you. Because sometimes we can go our whole lives without realizing that. Or we go a really long time before we realize that, right? So congratulations for that insight and that wisdom, for paying attention to what's going on with your heart and your life. And congratulations as well for the courage to set off on that new path. I think, the world doesn't really like it when we change. The people around us don't really like it. Usually when we change, it disrupts everyone else's life when we change. So it takes a lot of courage and strength to claim that new life. That's, so that's something. And I would say, how do we reconstruct then a life after we've deconstructed another? And again, this isn't knowing any of the circumstances behind this question. But I think to rely on those same qualities, to continue to rely on one's insight and wisdom. As we're walking a path into a new future, we really have to be paying attention. We have to be seeing what's happening around us. We have to be noticing what's happening in our hearts. We might make a wrong step on that path, and we got to turn around and go another way, right? So continuing to be really insightful and careful and noticing yourself. And then the courage as well. I mean, I think it takes every step on that new journey takes courage. The further we go from the life we had built from ourselves, sometimes it can be harder and harder until it becomes easier, because we've cleared the path. But that's just such an important, I think, experience in our lives. It's an important religious and spiritual experience. So thank you for that question.
Thanks, Rob. The next question is, Reverend Rob, last week my husband and I were thrilled to find out that I am pregnant, and then shortly after that we're devastated to learn that his mother has terminal cancer. How can you manage two such extreme emotions and life stages happening at the same time?
First, let me say congratulations on being pregnant. I'm so sorry for the diagnosis of your mother-in-law. I want to let everyone know that I've reached out individually to this family already, but chose this question to share with all of us today because I believe that though this is a particularly powerful example, we all have times in our lives when great joy and great sorrow sit side by side in our lives, and it's hard to imagine that they can be both there, present, and so full in our lives, and it's like we can hardly believe that our hearts will hold it all, right? I think that happens in our lives. Joy and sorrow are woven fine into the fabric of our lives. And so I would say to this family and to all of us in that situation that my prayer would be that you experience fully, let me back up, the thing that unites the joy of bringing new life into the world and the grief of saying goodbye to a loved one. The thing that unites those two experiences is love. Love is the foundation of both of those experiences, right? And so my prayer would be that you are able in this time to fully experience the joy of bringing new life into the world, because you owe that to yourselves and to your child, and that you allow yourselves to fully experience the grief of saying goodbye to a beloved mother-in-law, because that's how you honor the love that's existed there. But finally, that you also just recognize and allow yourself to experience the love that unites both of those experiences, and let your heart kind of fill up with that love and even burst open with that love, break open with that love, but live into love in all its expressions. I think that's what I'd say.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you for the question.
There were several questions like this one, and it's pretty long, so get comfortable.
Some of the questions were long.
Yeah. well, we are UUs, right? So we tend to use a lot of words, right? Because things are complicated. I try to avoid getting pulled into conversations that revolve around the bashing of right-wing politicians and their supporters, or even the hand-wringing about their policies. But one, it's pretty compelling to criticize those who oppose one's causes or feel fearful about their actions. And two, anything one says to diffuse the bashing of right-wingers can come across as holier than thou. So can you recommend some spiritual practices for reconciling a passion for social activism with a commitment to lifting up the inherent dignity and worth of every human being, even those who passionately oppose the social justice causes we support? Just an easy one for you, Rob.
Thank you for that question. This did come up emerge in lots of different ways in the questions. I think I want to start by saying that this culture that we're living in of polarization and demonization and us versus them and mutual suspicion, the values that we care about, the values that our faith teaches us to care about, can't survive in that culture or environment. If that's the playing field for where we go with our nation, the kind of world that we want to build, a world where everyone's inherent worth and dignity is respected, a world of mutual trust and support and respect, that can't emerge from that kind of culture. And so if we play on that playing field, we've already lost, right? And so what I appreciate is that this question invites us to kind of to notice when we play on those terms, and to stop playing on those terms, because we will, and what we care about will never thrive under those terms. They're contrary to what we care about. So, practices. Well, we have a practice here in the church that many of us have learned in our community organizing training, right? And it's called the relational meeting, the one-on-one meeting, where when we're trying to build some community organizing, we sit down with someone we don't know, we have a conversation with them about what's important in their lives and the stories behind their political commitments. And we're doing that ostensibly with our allies. But most of us, know and love people who believe really differently from us politically or otherwise. And I think we need to sit down and have those same one-on-one conversations, those same relational meetings that we've become so practiced at here in this congregation, and have them with people who sit in a different place than we do in our culture and in our politics, and have that conversation, and build some understanding, right? And try to defuse the polarization and the demonization, because that's what those meetings are about. The other thing is, how do we stop, bashing people who feel differently than us? Is we just stop bashing people who are different than us, right? We catch ourselves, and we stop. And we just check in and say, okay, what am I doing here? And we all do it. I do it. You do it. I've heard most of you do it, right? I mean, we're gonna do it in coffee hour afterwards. In coffee hour, practice it. You're gonna be having a conversation with someone about, the convention or about, what have you. You can stop approaching those conversations from an us versus them framework. It might be hard, because I'm not sure we know what to put in its place if it's not us versus them, because it's so ingrained in where we are right now, but we need to do it. So that's what I'd say.
Thanks, Rob. I think we just have time for one more question.
Okay.
And that is, I feel I want to be a kind of hardcore Unitarian Universalist and promote our faith more. But I don't know how to do it in a way that is true to Unitarian Universalism. What can I do to be a better UU proselytizer?
Oh, yay. Another UU evangelist. Thanks for that question. And I appreciate the spirit behind it, like excitement about our faith and wanting to share the faith. But let's be real. So right now, evangelism and proselytizing in our culture have a pretty bad, rap, and deservedly so, right? It's someone comes to you and you're their their Unitarian friend, and they love you. They're afraid that because of your faith, you will not go to heaven. You won't be saved, and it's really important that they share the faith that they believe will save you. Otherwise, we'll go to hell. That's kind of like that's a hard thing to it's kind of a hard thing to take in and to kind of appreciate someone's care for us when it comes that way, right? It's like, oh, thanks. And that's just not who we are as Unitarian Universalists, right? As Universalists, by definition, we believe that all paths lead to the holy, that all paths lead to being embraced in love. And so there isn't that kind of urgency that we have to kind of convert souls, right? That's not our faith. However, because we're here, all of us at some point have found something valuable in our lives from Unitarian Universalism or from this church, right? And sometimes you just want to share a good thing that's going on in your life, right? Because maybe someone you love would also think that's a good, would also benefit from that. And so how do we do that? I mean, that's without all the baggage of like you're going to hell. It can just be, I'd really love to tell you about this important community in my life. And you open up a conversation with them. I find that a lot, over all these years of being a Unitarian Universalist, the UUs are often like people in the closet about being people of faith, right? About being religious. Like they don't tell people they go to church because all their friends are secular and, don't think they'll understand. And boy, we're in Harvard Square, especially don't understand here, right? But what I find is that if you open that question, if you open that conversation and say, let me tell you about a community that's important to me, you might be surprised what you hear back from people. You might hear that beneath that kind of secular, what feels like a wall sometimes, is a real spiritual longing, or a real loneliness, or a real desire to be in community with others of working on similar values and causes. And so have the courage, to start that conversation with people. And, like I said earlier, invite them to church on Homecoming Sunday. It's more of an invitational evangelism than like a finger-wagging evangelism, right? Maybe we can do one more. I think we can do that one more. The one.
Reverend Rob, how do I comfort people who are scared when I'm scared too?
I wanted to make sure we got to this one. Yeah. How do I comfort people who are scared when I'm scared too? I feel like I'm doing that all the time in my role as a minister. Is helping people cope with struggles that I'm also struggling with. I think what I've come to discover in years of working with people with their struggles is that folks don't expect you to solve their problems or to make their fear go away. That's not what they want from a friend. They want to feel less lonely in their struggles. They want to feel seen. They want to be listened to. Listening is such an act of love. Deep listening is such an act of love that we can share with one another. And just think how powerful it is to be honest with them and say, "Boy, it sounds like you're really scared about the world, the future of our planet. I'm scared too." Then they feel less alone in that fear and that anxiety. So, we don't have to be perfect healers. Henry Nouwen said we can be wounded healers, and just simply reach out and accompany one another in our struggles. So, thank you all for your questions this morning. Thank you, Siobhan, for being the vessel for those questions this morning. And as I say just one more time, if there are questions that weren't answered or you'd like to be a little bit more personal and specific about them, please do send me an email, and we'll get together and talk some more about that. So thank you very much for your vulnerability and for your sharing.